Hi, hello everyone. My name is Margarita Amaxopoulou from the University of Oxford. So we are also part of the REMET research, and we are leading a work package focusing on multiple things. Among these things is a research sub-research project, if you'd like, on fact checkers. So here you see puppets or players. The main focus of this research is to actually map the fact-checking ecosystem in Europe and see a bit more closely at the role of fact-checking organizations, their relationship, what rules they abide by. You see here the presentation will have three parts. First, exactly because I'm aware that not everybody has a background on fact-checking, I'll say a few words on the movement and what fact-checking is all about. Second, I'll talk a little bit about the partnerships that fact-checking organizations have with other actors in the media ecosystem. And then I'll talk a little bit more about our research at Oxford. So the thing is that fact-checking, it's a controversial issue. It's a debated term, and many people say, okay, what does this even mean? What is even a fact, and so on. So here you see some key points. When we talk about fact-checking, we mainly think of claims that are made by public figures like politicians. And these figures are, as Vito mentioned, falsifiable information. So people check on this content for its accuracy. I should say that fact-checking traditionally and historically is part of a traditional journalism. So journalists are the actors that have been doing this work before the rise of social media. Generally, fact-checking is based on various evidence-based methods. There are methods, technological methods, forensic methods that are being used for this work. And of course, the rationale, I'm guessing it's a bit kind of evident. The rationale behind this work is to actually ensure that we have a democratic and open public discourse that will give audiences the opportunity to be objectively informed and have a holistic view about the different opinions on the discourse and promote, if you'd like, a more truthful debate. The definitions are a bit blurry, but generally a quite influential one is this non-profit organization definition. Fact-checkers and fact-checking organizations aim to increase knowledge by reporting, re-reporting, and researching the purported facts in statements, as I mentioned a slide ago, by politicians and generally public figures. So the thing is that why fact-checking was a task within the journalistic profession, it has kind of evolved into something else. So while it was a journalist's work to do this as part of their everyday and daily operations, it has become, if you'd like, a transnational movement. So among fact-checking people across borders, there seems to be an increasing feeling of shared mission, a shared identity, that we increasingly have shared challenges in the public discourse, and that we share the same values. We want truthful public discourse across borders. So there is more and more a rhetoric of unification of this effort, if you'd like. So we had transnational approaches. We had the establishment of the International Fact-Checking Network. And it feels like this is like a more of a grassroots effort, and that people share an identity. Here in this slide, you see a brief timeline of this global movement that I'm talking about. From the 90s, we already had some early fact-checking initiatives, usually taking place within traditional media and traditional press. Then we had the emergence of even the term, if it's like, fact-checking. This was in the mid-2000s. Of course, then we had increasing globalization tendencies and the interconnectedness of the world with the rise of social media. And most lately, in the last 10 years, we have this so-called debunking term, which is a bit different than traditional fact-checking. So many people trace the origins in the US, exactly because there were some professional journalists doing this work. I'm going through the timeline a little bit quickly so that I have a little bit more time for our research. as you see here in the 2004 election, there was the first time that this term was even used to describe some stories that came from politicians and the need to actually falsify or verify these claims. After the increase of the globalization and the social media rise and the increasing interconnectedness of modern technologies facilitated, we had even the first annual summit on fact-checking and the first international network on this work. The debunking term that I mentioned as the last stage in this timeline is essentially a term from, if you'd like, us focusing on a truthful debate and discourse at the more general level, but we don't really deep dive into the context of the news and the information piece, but we are taking an approach that is more like true or false. Is it true or is it false? And debunking is a term that is mainly used for viral pieces of information and not necessarily information coming from politicians this time. It can be information coming from anybody on the internet, actually, exactly because of the virality and the impact that viral information may have. So you see here on the right-hand side with traditional fact-checking, professional journalists that actually did this work in the past, they took a perspective that was multifactorial, we would say. They would try to incorporate other factors in this assessment when looking closely at the information that was under assessment, like the newsworthiness and the balance. And the broader goal was to actually ensure that they would offer to the public a reasoned debate overall, so that the people out there actually are informed about all the different sides. While with the debunking approach, so this is the era in the last 10 years, as I mentioned, this debunking approach is more characterized by a sense of urgency, exactly because there is something that's going viral, and then there is the very increasing pressing need to actually address the situation. If you'd like, this is characterized by some scholars as a public health approach, exactly because we have the priority is to the harm reduction is the priority, to address this immediately, fast, and not delve too much into the context or the depth, but generally to say if this is true or false. Generally, the fact-checking ecosystem, it's an ecosystem that heavily relies on partnerships. And a very prominent example is the example of the Meta's third-party fact-checking program. And this is a program that basically said that if an organization wants to be a partner with Meta, they have to follow a process and kind of submit their application, if you'd like. And then if you meet these requirements, then you can be a Meta's partner and do this fact-checking work for content on Meta. The thing is that I know that some of you may have followed these news, some of you not so much if you're not working in this area. The thing is that fact-checking, many social media companies like Meta are increasingly withdrawing their support from fact-checking initiatives. So Mark Zuckerberg, like a few weeks ago, he announced that he doesn't like fact-checking work anymore because invoking the bias of fact-checking organizations, saying that, oh, these people just cut content coming from the right, let's say, area in the spectrum, and this is problematic. And the result he came up with was that probably these organizations are biased. So while these developments unfold with more intensity in the USA currently, we don't really know when they're coming our way. In some countries in Europe, they may come a bit earlier than others, that's for sure. Of course, companies like Meta, they don't only give money, they also give expertise, they give technology, they give data, they give like a broader support. And there is value in this type of partnerships, exactly because when fact-checking work is enabled in this way, we may have all the good things we mentioned with a more truthful debate, like increasing scrutiny in public statements and so on. And it is a win-win really, because it's not only the public, the citizens that gain out of these partnerships, but also the companies, exactly because the fact-checking work can also have like a feedback loop for companies' own compliance, for transparency, accountability, for corporate social responsibility, and so on. So if these partnerships are that good, what's the problem with the partnerships? The problem with the partnerships, of course, as you may imagine, is that social media companies like Meta may have intense reach and power. There might be a very intense power imbalance between the social media company and the fact-checking organization. And the problem is that this can be quite far-reaching in terms of that the company can actually decide what contents need to be fact-checked in the first place. So it's that the company may have the upper hand, both in the selection of the content and the autonomy, of course, affecting the autonomy of these organizations. So these are the two main pillars, if you'd like, of the downsides of these partnerships. On the one hand, the power imbalances between the fact-checking organizations, and on the other hand, the change that we might see on this, if you want, broader approach that traditional journalists have been taking historically. So I have this is just an elaboration of these downsides. I'll skip to the research part. Essentially. In this landscape, while these problems are quite documented, what is not researched that much is the governance of these organizations. So there are so many political developments going on regarding their support, regarding whether they are biased or not, but we don't really know how these people operate and what rules are there on the ground, how they actually do their work every day. And this is what we're trying to map within the REMET project. We're trying to map these organizations' governance. More particularly, we're trying to see who sets the rules. Who are the important actors that set the rules of the game? Is it international organizations? Is it the EU with the DSA that we're discussing in this conference quite a lot? Is it national governments that are the main influencers, if you'd like, for these fact-checking organizations? Is it social media companies? So I should say here that a part of these discussions, who are the actors? A second part is what are the norms? And the norms can be both hard law, as the DSA is, and soft law. Soft law, we mean, for example, that for an example is Meta's guidelines. So Meta, in the example of Meta, they have some guidelines that these fact-checking organizations should follow, all right? And these guidelines are often on the ground, they operate as actual hard law, as if they were law, all right? So we want to also map these different layers of norms, hard law, soft law, and how they interact with each other. We also want to map the extent to which these fact-checking organizations are supportive or are resistant to these norms. So do they find these rules, both hard and soft, relevant for their work? Do they find this helpful or unhelpful? And what are the main factors that actually determine these organizations' stance towards their rules, and where they sit in this, if you'd like, a resistance spectrum? Of course, in this ecosystem, you'd imagine that people have a relationship with others. One example of such a relationship, I have already talked about it a lot, it is the relationship between the social media companies and the fact checkers themselves. But also, there have been other people saying that, look, fact-checking organizations may also have some ties with state institutions or private actors like donors, for example, who actually try to support financially fact-checking organizations so that they get independence gradually from social media companies. And finally, we'd like to see how fact-checkers, considering all of these, see their own position for society more broadly, how they see themselves and what role they think they play. In this study, we are now in the dissemination stage. We are doing a survey and interviews with fact-checking organizations in Europe, and this is why this is kind of a call for all of you. The survey relates to questions that can be answered by surveys, while the interviews have a bit more depth, and I want to unveil other issues like power dynamics that cannot be really tracked with a yes, no, or Likert matrix in a survey. So, and this is like I'm closing with this kind of invitation for you all. That if you have like any insights for the fact-checking organizations in your own countries, and you can bring us in touch with them, this would be most helpful. Thanks very much.